It is a pleasure to have all the community present here at this IX Fórum. Just some messages. We have headset for translation. Para quem não entende.
I think outside the room. Esse ano a gente.
This year, we have decided to increase the amount of beer for you to drink. And for the first time, at the end of the day tomorrow, we're going to have a space that is called Peering Coordinator Forum, a practice that we've had in other meetings. And the idea is to promote networking with people that do peering. And tomorrow, over these days, we'll share some more information with you. And the idea is for the end of the day to have a beer and you can talk and share ideas with people that peer. Let's get to our activities now. We're going to have some updates of the activities of NIC.br. I don't know where the presentation is. I think my presentation is the first. Well, traditionally, we open our activities talking about growth, how we have evolved from last year to now. This year, we've reached a peak of 6.11 terabits per second, a global growth of IX.br of 65%, and yesterday we had a 5.7 peak, which would account for a 54% growth. As to growth, well, that's very linked to São Paulo, but I'd like to highlight growth in other locations. My idea is not to take locations that are still developing, the small ones. We have a high percentage of growth or potential for growth. Well, Campinas has quite significant growth. Salvador, very likely. We have Fortaleza, 40-something% of growth. This is an average of traffic growth in the past 8 months. And São Paulo and Curitiba. This is important because this is a location, because we don't have a large number of content providers, but we have quite a lot of traffic. Regarding connected ASNs, we have throughout Brazil in the past 12 months a growth of 17% in the year, which accounts for 915 new ASs. Of these new ASs, not necessarily the new one have connected in IX.br. We've had more additional 538 connections and ASs. The repetition of ASs connected, we had 515 more connected. We have highlights, percentages for some locations. So what is important here is to highlight Fortaleza and Salvador, whose numbers are quite significant. I thought about information on some places. Won't have time to address them more comprehensively, but anyway, in Rio de Janeiro, to me, the highlight was the true start in operations of the PIXs installed at the port, and that's an initiative that has been successful. The effort was worthwhile, and it is a place that is concentrating a lot of traffic in Rio de Janeiro. Our plan for 2019 in Rio is to start the implementation of optical fiber with 200 gig channels, because they have some connections that are reaching their limit in terms of our operations with 10 channels. I don't know how much has been broadly publicized, but what we have some 40 gig ports available for some devices in Rio where we have available ports. So, well, we have a lot of keys here to another location. We have the infrastructure, and what we had for last year, Fortaleza, we have 7 PIXs in operation, and we have Angola cables prepared to be deployed first quarter 2019. Probably in January, it should start its operations. Porto Alegre, we've set up a partnership with some people there, and they coordinated activities. We migrated the core to an ASR 9010, and further on we will be able to have some 100 gig ports in this device. We've actually started 3 locations this year, Maceió, Teresina, and São Luís, totaling 31 new locations. Now, to talk a bit about São Paulo now, we have completed. We still have a last step of the migration process of the route servers. Because of the initiative for a safer internet, we will talk about this at a later panel, and we have made the implementation of certain security practices on the route servers. And for us to be able to do that, we needed to change the version of the software, throughput, processing capacity, and also having all the necessary technical requirements. This is a project that was run quite carefully. So we had various steps, and we've changed the devices one by one. And currently, we have all the route servers running the version 2 of BIRD. We still use the multiprocess version. We have 3 instances of BIRD running, especially for V4. And the final stage of this process will be our reducing from 4 route servers to 2. And we will maintain 2 active ones and 2 in standby. If we have any problems with the equipment or the machines, we can start operating with the others. They will have the same IP address, and the load of the connected routers will be reduced. If we find other choices for technology or equipment that supports our workload regarding route service, we may have other two with a different technology. But currently, we only managed to complete all the actions using BIRD. More recently, we were at LX, where we had the BIRD developers, and I made a comment, which was the following. I would like IX.br to be a headache for people that develop the route service, but unfortunately, it's the opposite. The standard for them are the large IXs from Europe, where they have a number of participants of about 800, between 700 to 800 participants, and our number is almost twice as much. And actually, rather than our being a nightmare to manufacturers, we have the nightmare to find a solution. I would like it to be the other way around. Regarding infrastructure, the optical channels, we have about 13.6 terabits per second installed in our São Paulo network. We had been noticing in the past 2 years the reduction of 1 gig ports. From mid this year, what we notice is the reduction of 10 gig ports. On the other hand, we have a significant increase in the 100 gig port number. So it's interesting to see. So people that have a number of 10 gig ports added more than 6 ports, they are actually moving on to 100 gig ports. We have deployed 3 new PIXs in São Paulo, Senti, OData, and Equinix SP3. SP3 is called PIX or 6. This has generated some kind of controversy in our community, but I'd like to say the following. There have been an adjustment that we made with Equinix regarding the way we would be operating, regarding the needs for resources and infrastructure in the data center, and the solution adopted was made to be totally transparent to the participant. The idea is, rather than having a physical cross-connect, we would have a connection that would be logical. Another interesting thing is the World Cup, 2018 World Cup, that we suggested to Global TV Network to expand their capacity. They have 300 gig links connected to PTT, and we doubled that. We installed DCI equipment in each one of these connections, and we moved on to 600 gig in terms of capacity. And that was really cool. We reached peaks of 550 gig during the World Cup, and the feedback from global people gave to us was that they had no problems of bandwidth restriction influencing quality. So all of those who obtained the global content via IX.br managed to get the best quality possible. So they were very pleased with that. In Rio de Janeiro, we have band or less bandwidth, but we were far from having any kind of bandwidth restriction. I'd like to share with you some comments on the instabilities, problems that we face. We have been facing this year in our network in São Paulo. This actually has great repercussion to the community. I think it is important for us to analyze the history that in 2016 we changed the technology. At that time, we had to make a change because devices that we had no density of 100 gig ports that were necessary for us to operate, and the traditional devices then, if we were to maintain the same line of devices equivalent, that would be outside our budget. What have we decided? So the market started operating with 100 gig devices using what we call the silicon market. They are standard chips that allow you to lower the cost of the equipment. That was our choice at the time. We chose a family of devices. We analyzed the offer of all the market players at the time, many using technologies, the same base technology. So we had to follow this line. As we've communicated in various reports, the main problem we faced was the storm of broadcast, and the problem, what happened was that mainly caused by when we had an isolation of some peaks. What problems we had? We had problems with optical fiber, not only in the streets, and we had electrical problems. Well, electrical problems are very basic things, sure. No matter how much we investigated, we never found the root cause of such problems. And we changed all the electric grid or the network that we used at the place where we had the problem, so that we could have more security, technically, both on our side and the side of the data center. We found no reason for the problems. And the equipment itself, this problem was quite complicated. That involved the SSD driver of the machine. And it happened from a sequence of actions that we had between the controller and the SSD disk. And we're talking about components and elements that are of very good quality. So it was very difficult to find the root cause and find the solution. And the final solution was to change the software of the disk controller. And this was quite complicated for us. And what did we do after that? We decided to apply some protections to eliminate the effects of the storm, broadcast and multicast. And currently we have some specific problems between some connections within the network. So when we have these problems, what happens? We must do certain things to certain switches, but traffic never stops in the network as a whole. There are just specific moments. We already have a new version of software for us to place in the boxes, and for us this is a process that we need to run quite carefully. because we cannot go wrong. We have a lot of devices in the network. We don't bring it down totally to have a complete update. You always have it available. And so this is an activity that we take great care. So we cannot just run updates every week. So this is quite complex for us.
For you to have an idea, from last year to the date, we have 68 calls for support to correct bugs, and we had to work on these problems. So it is important to highlight the total support that the manufacturer is giving to us to resolve this problem. The IX.br network in Brazil is unique in size of routers, traffic. This is a challenge for any of the manufacturers. Another thing that we have to highlight is the commitment from the engineering team. People that take care of this network, of this equipment, as if it were their family. So we are very proud of this work, and we are able to develop and to present this effort that is one of the biggest of the world's, and we do have a very lean team dealing with this. So next week we will start changing the equipment software version. We have the okay of our manufacturer. The validations are okay. Worst case scenario, we will determine this by the end of January. But if we do not have any problems in the middle of the way, we will be able to anticipate this. So I believe that everything will be okay by the middle of January. Just to end, I would just like to show you all our follow-up regarding our support calls. Here it's obvious that as of July, August, September, where we had the incidents, an increase of calls and an increase of IX.br as the main cause of these problems. So this is something that we have been following up, and we want to go back to the normal conditions in terms of support. So this is what I wanted to convey to you. Our proposal is the following. I believe that tomorrow, at the end of the day, we will have this moment. It's Talk to IX. If you have any questions, any doubts, I believe that we can have this session tomorrow to clarify any questions about IX.br. But any other things, my team, I am here at your disposal to clarify any matters. So thank you very much. So this was our engineering update. Now I would like to call Rodrigo and Moreiras, that will talk about the activation and open CDN. Good morning to everyone. I believe that you are here, you're there because I can only see lights here. It's so dark here. Well, my update is going to be briefer than that of Julio, because I don't have much to say or much to present as he did. I am going to start, then I will call Rodrigo to help me out. I would like to talk about service, how our activation team has providing services. They're not only in charge of activations, but they deal with calls by and large of new resources. It could be a migration, it can be a broadening of ports. Now this chart here shows us the different activations and migrations in all the locations. of the IX.br. Here we're including the locations that are serviced by the BOPs of the NRP. The blue line would be closed calls month on month, and the red lines would be open calls month on month. And in this chart, we can see the 2 past years, 2017 and 2018. We did not observe a main change of volume calls between 2017 and 2018. We do have seasonal changes, but nothing very relevant or very different from one year to another. This chart is the São Paulo chart. In São Paulo, our figures show this very clearly, a slight drop, but it's practically imperceptible in this chart. Now, confirming Julio's data, could the people from the technical team change this, the slide pointer? Well, here we're confirming Julio's data. Rio de Janeiro presented a great increase of calls. And this also happened in Fortaleza. Could you please change the slides? So we see an increase of calls for activations and migrations in Rio de Janeiro, in São Paulo, and in Fortaleza. So here we can see some figures. So what do we have? Activation and migration calls. In São Paulo, we had 1,506 calls serviced by our team in 2017. These were 1,616. There was a slight drop in the number of calls. It was very slight, actually. But on the other side of Rio de Janeiro, they had 378 calls vis-a-vis 239 of 2017. Fortaleza, they had 124 calls in comparison to 53 in 2017. These are activation and migration calls. If we were to consider all the calls, in São Paulo, we had 2,921 serviced by my team, and last year there were 2,901, so we had 20 more calls. In Rio de Janeiro, they had 568 calls serviced this year in comparison to 378 last year, 190 more calls. And in Fortaleza, they had 174 calls serviced this year in comparison to 83 last year. This is almost double the amount. And total, the activation team in São Paulo serviced 4,297 calls in comparison to 3,805 in 2017. Let's go to our next slide now. Go back one, yeah. Now this chart shows us the times to resolve the calls. The blue line shows us the number of calls that were closed, and the green and the orange lines shows us respectively the average and the average time the call was opened in the IX.br. So these are call activations and migrations in São Paulo. Here we can see the times to resolve the call were constant during these 2 years with very slight seasonal variations. Rodrigo, would you like to come here to help me and to talk about OpenCDN? Good morning. Now we will talk about the OpenCDN initiative. And the pilot project is taking place in Salvador in a summarized fashion. What is this project about? The idea is that NIC.br will supply to places when the structure to host the CDNs and to share the access to the CDN to the participants of the IX, participants of the local. The Open CDN is going to have a router. The IX participants, if they want to be part of the project, they have the BGP session with an Open CDN. The Open CDN will convey the routes of the CDN to the participants and the participants to the CDNs, of course. The idea of this project is that the cost with the rack, everything will be shared. The cost will be shared amongst participants. It's very different from other initiatives of NIC.br. OpenCDR is not for free, but we don't want to make a profit out of it. The only thing we want to do is to share the costs. And as I mentioned, the pilot project started in June this year in Salvador. We already have 40 active participants. 3 are undergoing the activation process. When we count the connected participants and their customers that are autonomous system, the project has already deal with over 100 autonomous systems, 40 directly, and the other 60 would be the indirect ones that are the customers. Now, when we see the number of prefixes that we receive, we have over 320,000 end users and will be serviced by the project. If we consider, for example, the use of CGNet, this number can even be higher. Today, we only have 2 CDNs as part of the projects hosted that are Google and Akamai. If we have representatives of CDNs that want to be part of the project, can talk to me, can talk to Moreira during the event, so we can exchange ideas and try to broaden the amount of services that are being provided. Now, regarding traffic, we had peaks of 700 beeps of traffic, but 10 giga would be the target because some of those CDNs have seasonal behavior. Therefore, the behavior of the traffic can change. It can go up and down. Now, the participants that connect to OpenCDN, well, in average, they exchange 150 to 100 mega of traffic. So there has been a great increase in participants. And here we have the charts from OpenCDN, from the AS OpenCDN in Salvador, and the IX. From Salvador as a whole, the IX aggregates, if you see the yearly charts, here you can see it. Here, the traffic aggregated in São Paulo doubled after they entered an open CDN. Moreira is going to talk about another initiative now. So if you pay attention to the first chart, they are in the same scale. So here you can see today the amount of traffic that you have in open CDN. And this also contributes with the IX.br traffic in Salvador. I believe that this is a significant amount of traffic that we can see here. And during this period, if you observe the chart here, we started operating with OpenCDN right here. So we have increased the traffic of IX Salvador. We had an exit of a major telco operator that diminished 5 giga of traffic in terms of traffic peaks. And afterwards, we recovered traffic because of the new participants in the Open CDN. We also had many new participants going into the Open IX Salvador. Why? Because of the installation of the Open CDN there. And we consider that up till the day this project is a success. Although it took us some time to deploy this pilot project, I believe that up till the moment everything has been very successful. We would like to have more CDNs, and we would like to remind you that the idea is to share within this model. The cache model that you have in Google is a model that they use within a network of a provider. But here we're able to share with a number of ISPNs as if they were traffic customers. I believe that this model could be useful for other CDNs. In the beginning of the project, we focused on talking to the bigger CDNs, but now we're interested in talking with everyone now. In Salvador, what we want to do is to share the costs. That was something that we hadn't been doing yet. So everybody that is participating is participating without cost. But as of January, we'll start sharing the cost. We will send a contract. We will give the amounts. And we will start using this model, and we hope that everything works out perfectly. Now, the last matter that I would like to comment with you here, that is something very brief that I would like to say. Could you please project the next slide? We are launching, during this event, these booklets. We're talking about a number of booklets. This is the first of many. We will have a series about internet infrastructure in Brazil. So this booklet is organized as a Q&A, and this first booklet is talking about a subject that is, and many providers have doubts about this. But when we participate, for example, in regional providers' meetings, a frequent question is about the allocation. What documentation do I need? How do I do this? Why is it difficult? Do I need a consultant? Do I not need a consultant? How do you define your rules? Can I have more IPv4 after the first allocation? So there are a number of questions that we're answering, and this is a Q&A model. And you will find everything inside these booklets. In brief, we will publish it in the NIC site, but you can already find the printed version in on the table outside. We have a table outside with material from NIC.br, material about IX, about safety, and you will also find this booklet on the table. And if you are interested, please take one, read it, and tell your colleagues about it. It could be other providers. Okay. So this is what I wanted to show you. And as Julio just mentioned, we will have an IX space of conversation. I believe that we can leave questions for this IX question moment, and I reiterate Rodrigo's invitation. If you offer CDN services and you want to better understand Open CDN and you want to participate in the Open CDN in Salvador or in other places, yes, we will take to other locations this Open CDN, to other areas. Talk to me, to Milton, to Julio. Please look for us during the event and we will talk about this matter. Thank you very much. Eduardo Barazal now, please, to talk about the regional forums and the different courses. Good morning to everyone. I am Eduardo Barazal Morales, and I will talk about courses and the IX regional forums. Our courses have changed a bit this year. We restructured these courses. Why? To make a partnership with RNP. We changed the 4-day courses. Now our courses are of 3 days. And we have an event of RNP with WTN, so our students can participate, can specialize with more academic content to get to know better the courses of the RNP, even initiatives and new bids. And during the last day, we have our regional IX Fórum. So we have 3 days of courses, 1 day of WTR, and 1 day of the regional IX Fórum. This is how we restructured our courses this year.
In addition to restructuring, we started now to put sponsors in our courses and partnerships. And this is a way for us to run throughout Brazil, publicizing our sponsors and actually taking some content from our sponsors and talks and in the IX Forum that is regional, and so that we can disseminate the information throughout Brazil. So we had this new structuring. It was quite successful, and we'll probably continue next year, and we'll have the possibility of having partnerships and sponsorships to take the course throughout Brazil. So we have this new format of courses. Regarding courses, I think it's a bit difficult to have the slides. Regarding the courses, we have IPv6 course, IPv6, we have the EAD, e-learning. We launched last year and we continue with this EAD. And this year, e-learning, we have over 2,000 participants with almost 500 per student certificate. We continue with IPv6 and we launched an advanced one to continue e-learning. There was a request from students because the basic course we had at e-learning did not contemplate all the contents we taught in our live course. So we created IPv6 Advanced so that we could give continuity for those that were distance learning students. And there was a requirement for those that go through IPv6 that is advanced. So for the next students, those that want to do our live course that is advanced, they should do the e-learning, our EAD course. We had almost 500 students certificated this year, and we managed to run 9 courses. This year we have about 300 certificate students with a certificate in this initiative IPv6. We had stopped the live courses last year. We resumed that more strongly with more courses, and we signed a partnership with Intel.br to be able to give some help to Intel.br to improve the devices they have of routers regarding IPv6. So we carried out a study with their routers, and we taught the technical team and to how to work with IPv6 in the best way possible, improving their devices and the devices and your devices that you use in your companies. Regarding the other course, the BCOP, operational practices, so best operational practices. So we have some new modules and we have some new contents. We started working with hardening of equipment. That was a requirement from our NIC.br to move into that because we had a lot of attacks regarding invasion of routers, ICPS, and we should disseminate this content to ISPs to reduce the number of attacks in Brazil. So we started the initiative of Safe Internet. We put the manners content and also contents of hardening equipment. With the new structure, we had 8 courses this year, and we certified 257 students. Regarding the IX Regional Forum, the last day, students have to participate, and it's open to the general public. And we had 10 events, and we went to the north, northeast, southeast. We traveled quite a bit. Tried not to repeat so much what we had done before. And we set up these 10 events, and we had 700 participants all learning about networking and always trying to understand the region and see how NIC.br can help the region and how we can transform IX to better serve the community. If they need a creation of new PICs, if we need more publicity to attract more participants, checking the possibility of creating an open CDN and disseminating knowledge on what IX is. Many times people mix up IX with a new CDN project. So create an IX in my city in a given place, thinking that when an internet exchange is born, it comes with contents. It comes with all the CDNs. And we have this role of disseminating, and the community should help. Not enough to create only IX. So once we create it, we have to adhere to the project. So we start having information and data exchange. So we should have the partnership, or we would like to have the partnership of everyone. So we are traveling throughout the country, and we intend to maintain our regional IX forums and having a greater outreach to other regions that we have not yet reached this year. And lastly, our international events that we took part this year. We had the LACNIC that we had prepared for the course of anti-spoofing, the hardening and manners, and we have practical tutorials and trying to have experiences with IVNG, how people can prevent attacks, best security practices so that for people to take so that they cannot be attacked or exploited in simple ways. We actually took part at the IGF, the Internet Governance Forum in Paris. Demi Men talked about it, and we were there to present a workshop. We submitted a project that we found as a problem in the Brazilian community of ISPs, which were online games that had not changed to or moved to IPv6, and we had problems with CGNet. And in our reality, we have few IPv4 addresses. Many people use CGNet, and many customers complained that they could not use the online game. So we set up a discussion. We had this movement to get to the online company. Xbox, Microsoft took part. Everything is available there at the IGF website, and the idea is to keep on disseminating this theme so that games start using IPv6 and avoid all these problems, especially regarding peer-to-peer connections that some people do, and also regarding, well, everybody uses the same IP, people can go down to a blacklist, and all providers are off air, etc. So we're trying to actually disseminate this at international events, and we intend to move on with this initiative so that all games use IPv6. And lastly, well, we have the donation of IPv6 books. We donated about almost 90 books, and we continue donating books for academic institutions. So if you're part of a university and want to have a book in your library, we donate those books. We can send the books, and you can have all the issues in your library. If you are a professor and want to have a book in your curriculum, in your syllabus, we have a procedure of actually sending the required number by our Ministry of Education. So we have the link, and you can find all the explanation on that. Here are some photos of our events that we've been to this year, and this is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Google, Abranet, and Cisco TDEC, partnership with Extreme, Seaborn, NTT, GlobeNet, Facebook, Angola Cables, Equinix, PX Technologies, Telsus, and L8. I'd now like to invite Ricardo Patada, who will give you an update on our scarce numbering resources. Good morning. I'd like to thank IX people for the invitation and your presence. As Maria said, it's difficult to see who's here. Okay, the idea is to be brief and to share some relevant information to the audience regarding IP addresses and ISN, which is the area which I work with. Just to set the scene for you, I might get it right at some point. To set the scene for you of what we do, it's not an isolated thing. We are in an ensemble of organizations that do similar work in the world. So we have various organizations, well, 5 organizations in the world that actually distribute internet numbering resources. I have put a map on the slide for your reference. Specifically in our region, the organization that has this role is called LACNIC, covering Latin America and some Caribbean islands. And in this region, we have 2 organizations that make this distribution within the countries themselves. They are called National Internet Registry, NIR, that can be seen in some documentations, and we have NIC or NIC.br that performs this role in Brazil, and the department registro.br actually distributes these resources. So if people need these resources, they ask from us, and just NIC Mexico as well, and all the other countries, the other ISPs from Latin America request directly from LACNIC, headquartered in Montevideo, Uruguay. The question why there are these national registries is a historical thing. They existed in these 2 countries, Mexico and Brazil. We had organizations that made this distribution before the creation of LACNIC. for reasons of how these countries connected to the internet, etc. LACNIC, after it was created in 2002, recognized the importance of these organizations and incorporated in its structures, thus maintaining this service. So what are our responsibilities regarding LACNIC? Comply with the allocation rules. Moreira comment, and Julio as well. We have certain rules to follow to allocate things. We are not the ones who define that. We have a process. I'll talk about this further on. So there is a process to define these rules, what we follow to make the analysis and to identify that we have a justification for a location. We follow these policies that are defined within LACNIC. There is a community, there's a process or procedure that defines our rules. And in our case, they are ratified by CGI, and once they are published, we comply with them. Another point that also generates certain queries is regarding costs for allocation. And they are not defined by us. LACNIC has a price list for the initial maintenance and for the continuous maintenance. We follow the list price. The only difference is that in Brazil we cannot charge in dollars, so we convert that to reais and we charge in reais. As it would be very complicated for us to convert, as we have to charge if we convert every time. Well, we define an amount early in the year and we use that amount that has been converted throughout the year. This conversion has been stable until this year. Next year we will have a slight change. I don't know if you've been informed, considering the increase of the exchange rate of the dollar regarding the real. Why is this important to us? Because we transfer a percentage of this money to LACNIC, part to pay for NIC service, and another part is actually transferred to LACNIC. So once we transfer it in dollar, we have to pay some dues, and we try to keep up with the exchange rate regarding real, and we have some responsibilities regarding LACNIC. So this is just to clarify things to you. As to rule and policies definition, it's important to emphasize this because the process is open to all. We here can take part, and in the definition of these rules, have new rules that are actually effective. It's a smooth process, and we have been noticing an increase in the participation of Brazilians in this process. This is good, because if we make a comparison in terms of the size of the country and the continent, we are quite relevant. It is interesting that we should have an increase in the number of participants in our community and actually more active in this process. It happens through a discussion list, an email list. It's open, and you can actually refer to what has been discussed. Define that as transparency. You can see what has been discussed. This is actually archived and available. And we have a discussion within this discussion within the list is I've put something there for any language. So that's a debate that came up recently. Well, not being a barrier in terms of language. Well, anyone can write in English, Portuguese, Spanish, and we adapt. If somebody wrote in Spanish, we do not understand, we have translation tools. This is not a barrier for people to participate. This translation course that we've had to translate from Spanish to Portuguese, the person will have vice versa. So we share that with everyone. And what we have seen since we started LACNIC in 2002, well, language has never been a barrier. It may create additional work, but it is not something that would prevent people from participating. People write in English, Spanish, or Portuguese, and we adapt. And the community is quite open. It will not create restrictions for people to write in a language that is not their own mother tongue. Part of this process also envisages presentation and measuring ideas at a live forum, which we call a forum of policies. It's a live meeting in different cities. Everything is broadcast on the web. We have online participation so that nobody is excluded. And after that, we have a process of comments, and the board ratifies everything once these rules that have been discussed and approved are effective. We've had some changes in this process that have been quite recent. The process previously was the following. We discussed on the list, and then we presented at a policy forum, and then we measured the acceptance or not of a given idea, which is so-called the consensus, that we call consensus, and this has recently changed. In the past policy forum, that has been changed. Now we have a period for an idea to be discussed, both on a discussion list and also in the forum, and then this measurement of acceptance and consensus regarding the idea is also measured on the list. So the people that possibly cannot take part in the live forum can express on the list whether they accept or not a given idea or proposal. So I have some time frames for your reference, and you can measure now the acceptance of a new idea. So this consensus has a statement, what it means in the text in the policy development. Before it was an open idea, there was no definition. Now we have a definition there. The idea is the following. If there is no rejection, a technical one, and there is a demonstration of acceptance that is reasonable in the community, the idea moves on. Just briefly, for your reference, these are the rules or proposals of policies that have been discussed this year, 2018. I have a list there. I won't go into details here. We have everything. You can find everything on the link below. These actually have been approved and ratified, and they are actually effective. Just briefly on updates that have had a reflex on the rules in the past year or two. New categories have been created for ISPs within the LACNIC forum, and that is reflected upon our service. One of them is the nano category to serve smaller providers or ISPs that could fit in the available category. So allocations /24/23, that is possible now. We have a new category, and the larger categories that would end at an email call. And then we have an additional 17 from then on, and the idea was to be more equitable in this distribution of categories in the LACNIC structure. I won't go into details. At the URL, you can find a reference to obtain all the information you would like.
Referência também.
I will now talk about the statistics. How do we distribute autonomous systems in Brazil? As you imagine, there is a concentration of enterprises in the southern, southeastern region. São Paulo has the greatest concentration of enterprises with autonomous system. We have companies that have a national reach, that have a headquarters in a city, but their network reaches other states, and it's not only concentrated what we have in the statistics. So this is also for you just in terms of information. And just coming to an end. This is to observe the growth. We observe significant growth in the number of autonomous systems, and here it is reflected in the number of allocations from IPv4, IPv6, IS, and addresses. This is data from since 2010, and here the chart on the left-hand side shows you that most of the autonomous systems in Brazil have the allocation of IPv6, although not all of them use it. At least they've made the first step. So here it's divided per category. The biggest is 100% because it's a smaller amount, but even the smaller ones already have allocated 80% of their IPv6, and this is very good. Here, how is the distribution of these providers in the different categories as expected? Great part of them are in the small and medium-sized categories. We are aware of this. We know Brazil. We know that there are a great amount of small providers in very remote areas, and they are the ones that have a very important role in the internet penetration in Brazil, and here it's reflected in the amount that has been allocated. I wanted to show this chart so you could see the amount of requests that we serve per year. Here, the peaks. This is the sum per year and the smaller ones that are divided per month. They have increased, but they're above, around 1,500. Why did I put this? Because I want to show another chart. It is very common to think that there is a barrier to receive these allocations of these IP allocations. But if we analyze in terms of figures, for example, it is very low, the amount of requests that are rejected. So during the year 2018, 1,800 requested that we received. Only 26 were rejected out of them because they did not meet the rules, as a matter of fact. There are others that we canceled the request because the person didn't answer, the person disappeared, or even the person asked to close the ticket. But which, as a matter of fact, were canceled because they didn't meet the rules, very low, less than 3%, around these lines. They're telling me that IPv4 ended. Just for you to see the amount of allocations, 966, a bit higher than what Julio mentioned. He said 915 perhaps. We have allocations from the month of December that haven't been accounted from. As you can see, from 1,800, 966 were contemplated to allocate. Very significant amount. We have duplicated requests, and some are canceled because the person disappears. They no longer answer our email, so we have to close it, right? In terms of information, what is the participation in Brazil in the regional scenario? This data is from LACNIC. Here we have 60% of IP addresses allocated in Brazil when we compare it to the region. 70% are IPv6. And 69, practically 70% are autonomous systems of the region are present in Brazil. And perhaps the part that is of your interest is, when is IPv4 going to end? The information is from the LACNIC address. They have in this URL all the statistics showing you What are our projections based on the volume of allocations, the pace of allocations currently? There are a number of mathematical scenarios, but the most likely would be December 2019, but this can change based on the pace of allocations that we see currently. We are in the stage 3 of the process of depletion. So we didn't want the depletion to happen suddenly and to cause a greater impact than what is causing. And on stage 3, we only have initial allocations of these IPv4. Okay, so this would be it. So if you have any comments, I believe that we will be at your disposal to talk to you. They're already showing me my red light. That means that I've run out of time. Thank you very much.